So, Joel, tell us, what are mole children?
Yeah, I'm going to need a beer for this one, Jack, because mole children are probably one of the most ridiculous things to come from the Q-Anon conspiracy universe, and they've got a lot of fucking competition. It's widely said to be a shameless extension of the satanic panic in the 1980s in the States, where people just basically just randomly accused people of being horrific pedophiles. Not based on any kind of evidence or anything, just great headlines, great hysteria, great fear within the ranks, really good for recruiting people to churches. And one of the famous ones there is the McMartin Preschool in California in the 80s, which was accused of horrifically abusing children in various forms, including fucking tunnels.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
They had tunnels too, yeah. None of it happened, but that was the accusation, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's just complete nonsense and hot air. So Q-drops have had this obsession with dark to light, which they tend to attribute to things like mole children emerging from the dark tunnels into the light of day, where, Trump saves them because he's a fucking light worker. All this weird shit about light. So the mole children thing really fits into that. But essentially, it's interwoven between vague Q-drops and the idea of, unspeakable evil happening, underneath our feet.
Yes.
But as we discussed in the Unholy Trinity episode in number 14, institutionalized child sex abuse is absolutely a thing.
Absolutely.
But this is just a complete bunch of shit. It's just hysteria designed to rile up the ranks. And
worse, what it does is actually cloud the business of law enforcement around child sexual assaults.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So if you're an investigator sort of looking deeply into the internet and so forth, whether you're working for the Australian Federal Police or whatever authority you're working for around the world, you're finding your work is far more difficult now with all of this smoke and nonsense about mole children.
Yeah, smoke and mirrors, yeah. And it's fucked because, there were child sex trafficking hotlines in the States where you need to report these things, and you have these mums calling up going, oh my God, I read on Facebook that there's a mole children network under Central Park.
I just seen on Facebook, I just seen on Facebook.
Yeah, and the worst thing is, apparently some of these calls sounded legitimate because these guys have such an active imagination. So they made up these scenarios and they had to investigate. It was fucking disgusting.
So it's an active cover for actual pedophiles as well. I mean,
that's how it
works in terms of enforcement. Yeah,
in the end. Yeah. So I'll give a warning. It's pretty arbitrary because this is so fucking ridiculous. But this does contain some fairly heavy themes. They're all completely made up. But there is a huge level of bloodlust in the QAnon collective imagination. They just love, talking about child rape. So this is what this episode's about. If you don't like these sort of themes, just flick it off because these people have really cooked brains. But if you keep in mind that everything we're saying is completely made up nonsense, it is kind of funny in a weird,
very
sad,
explicit,
depressing kind of way.
The alarming thing is how explicit the stuff is.
And, they go into such detail.
And that tells you that the people who are generating this nonsense are not necessarily the ones who are believing it, but the ones who are generating it are pretty perverted human beings.
Yeah, they're pretty fucked in the head.
Well, it all starts underneath Central Park in New York City. Mysterious white tents start to appear in the area. Some people believe that these were providing medical assistance during the pandemic, but that's obviously bullshit. And those people are morons. They were medical tents, sure, but they were there to facilitate the rescuing of the mole children. And the mole children lived under Central Park, and many have never seen the light of day. And their eyes are on stalks about 2 feet from their face. No, that doesn't happen. Evolutionarily, it might, but not right now. They've spent the most part of their lives being horrifically abused, sexually, violently, and mentally tortured to increase the level of adrenochrome in their blood. Adrenochrome, of course, being the drug of choice for elites. Ever wondered why celebrities stay forever young? And I have. You might say it's access to wildly expensive cosmetic surgery practices and high-quality diets and dietitians and what have you, but that's because you're an idiot. It's adrenochrome, drained from the blood of tortured children.
Of course it is. See, if adrenochrome is harvested from kids, then the tunnels underneath Central Park are basically a farm.
It's a big farm.
And look, you've got to get your fix somehow. It's under the orders of God Emperor Donald J. Trump. The little ones are being rescued from this hellish existence. And some would say the entire coronavirus hoax was put in place by Trump to stage this rescue operation from the tunnels.
Big military. It
has to be covert.
Yeah, big military operation 10 kilometres below the surface of the earth.
Yep. It's a really long lift. You know, when you press it and it's down the bottom, you got to wait ages for it to come
Girl
up.
from Ipanema
Very
playing in the
frustrating.
background.
Yeah. It's quite upsetting. Yeah, that's our take on things. It's fucking pathetic. So essentially, this whole thing has this cover story where the good guys are killing the bad guys, and the thing that underlies this, which is this great way of obfuscating the truth, which is that because the truth is so horrific, because these children are so deformed, and children, the most innocent of all, this is so horrific that if you learn about it, if you know about it, it can send you completely insane.
Yeah.
Which is this amazing virtue signal of strength from these fucking morons who are there with their infinite fucking resilience saying, look, you don't want to know about this. It'll send you crazy. I know about it.
I can handle it. Yeah.
I can handle it because I'm hardcore. I had 10 shots last night. I can handle fucking everything. So that's how these cunts operate. And honestly, it's one of the most cool parts of it. Well, I mean, it's actually, there's a lot of competition there. So it is really one of the most annoying and condescending features of the QAnon universe when this wokeness is this superpower and this strength is this virtue, and normies will just never be able to handle this profound truth, which is all just made up fucking fan fiction nonsense by sexually violent lunatics. But essentially, the flip side of this is they love to go on and on and on about how when they heard about it, they just cried for days.
He's doing this for the kids. We've got to do this for the kids. For the kids.
I just got to do it for the kids. Just do it for the kids. Fucking pathetic.
Well, influencers absolutely love to go into graphic detail about how sad they are once they learned of the existence of mole children. It's actually really pathetic. High level. Oh, you just did that. Sorry.
Yeah, I can edit that out actually. Yeah, because that did just get ripped into. I'll just
well, let's do this. Right. So how do we know that this absolutely true story is true? Okay.
Yeah, sweet as. Okay, and then to 7:15 or so. All right, cool. So do you want to just say, how do you know this?
No, you say that. You say that.
Okay. So how do we know this absolutely true story is true? Well, you see, I know a nurse that worked in the tent.
No, you don't, Charles. No, you don't.
All right, cool. Prove it.
Yeah, prove that I lie.
Yeah. Prove I lie. Yeah, that's right, bitch. So basically, I listened to an audio clip online featuring some QAnon influencers saying they knew a nurse at Central Park, which is, of course, completely solid intel. I mean, like, how could you fucking doubt that? And she said, a person that of course exists, that countless children, many in body bags, flooded these white tents, these white medical tents, 35,000 of them.
Wow. It's a lot.
Yeah, just a casual 35,000 children. Yeah, just like, and there's not even that many tents. You can see photos online. It's fucking pathetic. Pregnant preteens, of course they are, having a pretty rough trimester there, and deformed children who'd never experienced any kind of reality outside of the tunnels, never seen light, were often euthanized out of mercy. Now, within this fan fiction universe, I find this absolutely stunning because it is a generally right-wing conspiracy universe. So you've got these staunch Republicans who will fight to the death, no pun intended, over euthanasia laws. And yet, when it comes to mole children, they're like, oh, we need to mercifully take out the children because
and abortion laws too.
And fuck off.
Well, these children were so hideously deformed they had to be put down, and I'm comfortable with that.
Completely, as opposed to like grandma who has to sit there and be like, kill me. Like, come on, fucking hell. So essentially, the really fucked up children were apparently taken to a supporting naval vessel parked offshore, which was definitely not there for medical support because of the overflowing hospitals, but it was because of the children.
Yes,
and it was actually it's quite funny because the boat is named the USNS Comfort.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's going to comfort the children. And of course, this nurse that I absolutely personally know did not make up as a character in this weird, violently sexual conspiracy fan fiction story, saw that some of the children coming out have special powers.
Wow.
Yeah, the kind of powers that form when someone is tortured so much. Their very DNA changes into something awesome.
The DNA changes. Like perhaps some of them have been vaccinated. Some of them have their dip tat and have just gone rogue.
Oh, that's great.
Look, once the children were removed from the tunnels, explosives were detonated, killing all the perpetrators in a heaps cool action sequence. Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, very exciting.
The tunnels are deep enough. We'll talk about that later. Conveniently, nobody heard the sound. Whew, thank God, that was a bit of a relief because otherwise, the media would have been onto it. Just a mild rumble that nobody's seen. But notice nothing on the Richter scale at all. So no one went nuts.
Just casual.
The children have been saved, but they will never be able to integrate into society. So I guess that's why we will never hear their stories. They totally exist, but just like an absolutely real girlfriend that goes to a different school, we will never meet them. This is why
she's definitely real, though.
Yeah, she's definitely real. I've got photos from her. I've got photos of her. This is why we rely on 4chan anons to tell us what really happened. That and the hero of this story, one Timothy Charles Holmeseth from the absolutely real and not made up Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. Sorry,
you see, all this stuff, it comes as a big surprise to a lot of people because you may not have heard of this. But the reason why is because pieces of shit like the man across the table from me here,
that's
in the mainstream media, are keeping it a secret.
Well, it's very
what do you say?
I wouldn't say it was keeping it a secret. It's a very complicated story, and we just think our readers just won't be across all those intricacies. So we just let it go.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of shit I expect. Oh, did your lawyers?
Let's just pump out another piece on the royal family and the troubles they're having at the moment.
Yes, with mole children, in fact. So many tunnels. I mean, that probably is a fucking theory that exists, let's face it. So, one of the things I found really interesting when I was researching mole children for the 9,000th time for this episode, because I look into this way too often, there's actually a kernel of truth in the whole sort of mole children under New York City, because there are mole people. Now, okay, they're not, trafficked children for adrenochrome, but there's a small group of homeless people of the 60,000 people that sleep rough in New York that live under the city. About 2,000 of them live under the city in these abandoned subway lines with these sort of like makeshift neighborhoods. And cops and security guards play cat and mouse with them. Mice play cat and mouse with them because apparently it's full of rats and stinks.
Yeah, there'd be one or two rats there.
But to them, it's home. So, it's that thing of having that kernel of truth they sort of build on. But as with anything that lives in an unfamiliar way that people don't understand, people have made up all sorts of shit about them. Same sort of X-Men shit. But at the end of the day, these are just people who are just trying to get by, living rent-free underneath some subway stations. I get it. It's fair enough.
That's all it is.
Now,
yeah.
And it's interesting that these sort of things, you see these things that exist and it's like nothing is unique. It's just mashed together by assholes on the internet. So, as per usual, the QAnon community are absolutely non-violent. This is something they've said repeatedly, and we must hold them to their word. Except when they are violent.
We've been through this. Just a little bit violent when
just a smidge violent.
Pushed.
Yes, that's right.
When you push them into a corner, they will pull out the AR-15s and just start fucking shooting everybody. But other than that,
when opportunity knocks, you shoot through the door.
Terrifically non-violent people.
Yeah, it's fucking pathetic. So essentially, this is the whole sort of thing where, they tend to try and pin any unrest on false flags and Antifa and all this sort of stuff, but you can't do that with this one. This one is just too good. A trained engineer by the name of Eduardo Moreno had been completely radicalized by bullshit Alex Jones produced YouTube videos on general Pizzagate and mole children and pedophilia and things like that. General QAnon nonsense. And when the mole children thing really really piqued his interest was piqued to a point where he decided to do something about it. And that's the problem with the QAnon conspiracy universe. The issue here is that it's participatory. It's real time. So you can do things to stop things from happening, which is really fucking dangerous. So the thing is, he basically just swapped out New York at LA. And there are always these sort of things, these conspiracies. We'll go into this later with Melbourne and Australia, that you can just swap the city name and everything else just
be the same. Be exactly the same.
Change the name of the park and it's just the same fucking thing. So just like in New York, a naval ship was parked offshore giving support to overloaded hospitals due to the coronavirus outbreak. And of course, this was just cover for the mole children rescue, of course. I mean, what else is the explanation going to be? Just maybe a fucking pandemic. So Moreno decided to put his engineering skills to good use and derail a fucking train into the port of Los Angeles to try and hit the naval ship.
Yeah, safe.
Just casually.
Saving lives. This is the thing. I mean, I will be a hero at the end of this. This is what drives them. And
Travis Bickle.
Yeah, it's the Travis
fucking
Bickle
lunatics.
syndrome. That's right.
And it's just so misguided. But this guy is great. He's actually like a high functioning moron. So
essentially, he can drive a train.
it's very hard to say what would have happened if he actually hit the vessel and there were a bunch of mole children on there. Like, would it kill the kids? Like, is this his like spectacular form of mass euthanization? Like, I just don't get it. The logic is really missing. But to give you an idea of how clever this guy was, so he's skidding out, doing his thing, getting the train derailed, and what he did is he lit a flare in the cabin and just sort of like held it. And he figured that what would happen is that when he's breaking through, it would just set off an explosion.
Yeah. That's gonna,
don't know why.
That's going to kill everyone, though. Everyone,
well, yeah,
including the mole children.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a flaw in the plan. But essentially, it's just like an action movie where, like, you know, they have all the fuel and, like, the Nicolas Cage type will, like, smoke a cigarette and then, like,
Bruce Willis,
throw the cigarette into the thing. Yeah, guess what? Cigarettes don't light petrol. It'll just fucking go out.
They don't. Mostly they don't, yes.
So, you know, that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So, essentially, the flare didn't make anything explode, which is unsurprising. And he brushed himself off and fled the scene because he's a fucking lunatic. And essentially,
was the train derailed? Was the so the train has come off its rails
space
and just gone nuts. So so it's flipped,
skidding like for I'm not sure how far it went, but it was a long skid. The guy got pretty decently close to the bloody boat. The guy knew what he was doing. I mean, fucking lunatic. And like, essentially what he did was like, because the way in which these things happen, they happen with a lot of force, but not a lot of speed. So like there's that sort of momentum, but it's not like as if he's like in a speeding car that just hits a wall. It's just sort of skidding out. So he's fine. So he just gets out and just sort of flees the scene. And a cop's just like, oi.
What are you doing? Walking around here near the side of a train derailment.
Holding onto a flare, going, boom. So that didn't go well. So now he's looking at 20 years, which is less than Jacob Chansley, mind you.
Oh, look, 20 for this man would seem to me to be a little bit small as well. It is
a discount.
He might have done a little bit of a plea bargain now. I wonder what he's been charged with in total. I'd love to see the list of charges.
It'd be an interesting little... it'd read like a story, which I know they love, so that sort of makes a bit of sense. And look, honestly, he should be held to account, but I feel like he's a bit of a pawn in the game here. This Holmesef dickhead who's still publishing nonsense articles on his ridiculous website where all this shit came from.
Alex
Jones, of course.
Yeah.
Amplifier extraordinaire of complete trash logic. These people should be held responsible for this in some way, shape, or form, because these motherfuckers are absolutely the root cause of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. But basically, Alex Jones doesn't. His influence doesn't extend to Australia, and hopefully, you'd like to think at least most of us are going to say, "Look, you're full of fucking garbage." But what about mole children in Australia, Joel?
Yeah,
I mean, basically, during the pandemic, they took the mole children story, just changed the city names. There's tons of tunnels around Sydney and Melbourne to give this idea oxygen. There are reports of train workers hearing the sound of children playing in the rail system. This is in our major cities in Australia. This, of course, means there's definitely a pedophile ring going on underground in our major cities. And when we say underground, we're talking 10 kilometres below the surface. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, the 10...
We'll talk about it a little bit.
The 10 kilometre thing... It's embarrassing, though, because the thing with the 10 kilometre stuff, so basically there's a whole bunch of seismic activity 10 kilometres underground that happens all the time. There's maps that show it out. It's like a thing that they notice on radars and things. There's people who do it. It's a science nerd thing. No one really cares. These are just grumbles, geological grumbles. But the thing is that because the whole mole children thing relies on the idea that at the end, the perpetrators are locked in the tunnels and the tunnels are blown up, that seismic activity then creates this weird, semi-plausible way of saying,
just trying to get out.
This is happening.
They're probably just
so essentially, that's why they come with 10 kilometers, because the seismic activity is 10 kilometers underground. So the most logical thing for these people to say is, well, I guess the tunnels are 10 kilometers underground. That's their ipso facto here. That is such a dumb basis.
Well, it's so dumb, Joel. You know, the geologists calculate that for every mile you dig beneath the Earth's surface, the temperature rises 10 degrees Celsius.
Ooh, that's warm.
So 10, we're up at 100 Celsius. We're boiling there. And the pressure that you would face if you ever were. No one ever has been 10 kilometres below the surface of the Earth. But if you were there, the pressure that you would sustain is at around a rate of about 5 pascals, and that's 7,300 pounds per square inch.
That sounds bad.
So my tip is for them, if you're an aspiring male child, just casual shorts and a tee, just comfort, just a bit of comfort, just for comfort, and try and ignore the what are we talking about? We're talking about 6 tons of pressure per square inch that will come on your body, and that's probably going to turn you into a pink goo. But as I say, it'll be warm. Prepare for that.
Yeah. It's like a tropical holiday, except full of sexual torture.
And a bit dark.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Pretty casual. So a lot of this stuff has actually come from one of our favourite people we looked at.
A few of our local kooks, yes.
Linda Everingham. What a character. Look her up. She's really funny.
Really funny. And we talked about her before, of course, while we talked about QAnon and, the Save the Children ersatz heroism. Linda Everingham is employed, or was last time I looked, employed by Telstra. Not to knock out this kind of weird shit, but she's employed as a sales manager. So it's very, very strange. When I did talk to someone at Telstra about it, he said, you know what she's doing, and spoke to this person about the QAnon stuff. He said, really? I mean, I don't know. It's not the sort of thing is it the sort of thing you should lose your job over? I'm not. I think it is. Really, I really do think it is.
That's cancel culture. You're taking Dr. Seuss with that bathwater. It's no good.
Well, I can't see how she can divorce, how Everingham can divorce her work responsibilities from these bizarre beliefs that she has.
They're very strong ones. And I mean, like the way in which he describes them, the deep underground military bases or DUMs that are 10 kilometers underground, fostering these children with the tunnels that connect them. I think Dan Andrews has featured a lot. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, Dan Andrews, of course, disappeared. I mean, he was taken to Guantanamo, and I presume is still there, which means we've had a Dan clone in place. He's doing a terrific job.
Well, who's been banging the kids then?
Yeah, he's doing a great job. He's very popular.
One of the things that I find interesting with this, and this is sort of plays to the Dan Andrews thing, is that in the States, you've got Trump and you've got the Q team that are saving the kids, but they love Trump. There's the cult of Trump. Here, we've got state governments, a lot of them are Labor, especially like to Dan Andrews, that people absolutely despise in the QAnon circles. But they're not big fans of ScoMo either. I mean, like he's not very sort of pumped up by anyone. So you got all the layers of government, and a big mystery for me has been, like, maybe it's just a military fetishism, but I've never really seen any good screenshots of any Q influencers or anything like that saying what it is. Now, I love this because this goes so much back to the idea of just copying and pasting shit from America. Apparently, according to my cousin Peter Maxwell, who sent the link onto the group, there's a decent little screenshot going around in his pilled buddy circles saying that it's just the Q team in the States. So they don't like Dan Andrews. They don't like Gladys Berejiklian. They don't like ScoMo. You've got no one left. Fuck it. We'll just call it. The Americans are doing it. Why not? We'll just bring it. We copy and pasted the rest of the conspiracy. Why stop there? Something.
They don't have the imagination.
No, they don't. And that's they really don't.
The Australian anons just don't have the imagination to pull it off, so they just glom off the American nonsense.
Not to say it's a very smart theory or a very interesting story. To say they don't have the imagination or intelligence to improve on that is an indictment of their character. That is for sure. But one thing that I really liked was the Pete Evans pushing the roadworks.
Yes, multiple roadworks around Melbourne, Greater Melbourne, in fact. Got to be 3,000 or 4,000 there, and in typical Pete Evans style, he put up a silly little reminder about one of his silly ass documentaries, and then just put this photograph of literally thousands of roadwork symbols across Greater Melbourne, as if to
textbook
say,
vague Pete Evans.
Someone's banging away in those tunnel walls, guys, and I mean, so there's the rescues going on. I mean, he basically, if you ask me about Evans, you would just say he's just a joiner. He's just going to glom off this. He knows that a lot of his pilled fans are going to be into it, and so he's going to play along too. Never actually comes out with straight out QAnon stuff, but he just you can tell he just supports it because he thinks it's it's all part of his grift.
Well, the thing that's interesting when it comes to Pete Evans, and God, we talk about him a lot, but when it comes to things where he invites his people to talk about, like the actual message basically says, Victorians, I send you all love. Like, fuck off. I will let others below inform and empower you as to what is really taking place during this lockdown. Prayer hand, prayer hand, prayer hand. And then he plugs his documentary.
Yeah,
so that's him basically saying, and I mean, in no uncertain terms, I'm not going to say this. I'm going to get other people to say it, but this is what's happening. And he knows exactly what he's prompting them to say. But you know all too well that he tacitly approves anything that's on his Facebook. Now, this is back when he had a Facebook profile, and God, I'm glad he doesn't anymore. He will delete anything he disagrees with, and he will block the person that posted it because he believes in free speech, of course. So when you see something on his page, whether it be like, mole children or Holocaust denial, you can be quite confident that that is something that he tacitly approves of because he hasn't deleted it, because he carefully curates his cult-like social media profiles.
But yes, absolutely. But more importantly, he nurtures that audience. He knows where these people are. Politically is probably not the right word, but he knows exactly what their beliefs are, and he panders to them. So if basically, if it ever did occur that Evans was sat down and interviewed properly about his beliefs, it turned out he wouldn't believe in all that much, but he knows enough to get some cash out of these people.
Absolutely. And this is the thing. It's interesting. Whenever he's sort of, pressed on a question or something like that, he always starts sort of trailing off and being a bit vague. And it's like, you really don't know that much. Whereas a lot of his supporters, they are very cluey. And of course, it comes back to the same thing. I like to think that these days, after all this research I've done on these conspiracy universes, I am an expert on stupid shit people made up on fucking Twitter. So, let's face it, his followers, they're pretty well researched, but they're researched by watching YouTube videos of grifters telling them about how bad vaccines are.
That's it.
It's not a specialty you really want. Like, I got some friends from back in the day, and I mean, varying degrees of Facebook friendship, but some of them, they go on and on about all the research they do. I'm like, oh, buddy, BitChute videos aren't research. You're not an expert. You're just a fucking lunatic. Anyway, that's all the story. But,
it is indeed.
But yeah.
But look, just to conclude here, Joel, you've got some very moving. We're both students of literature, and we know our listeners are too. And just to finish off here, you've got some mole children poetry, not written by mole children, it must be said,
No.
because mole children don't exist, but poetry written by some of the pilled QAnon followers. Can you read that one, please, Joel? It's just
so. This one,
thing.
this is posted by Travis Yu on Twitter, and unfortunately for the truth seekers, there's always a bad one in the bunch. And this account was pretending to be William Barr, the Attorney General of the United States of America.
Oh.
So the next time some fucking QAnon says they're a truth seeker, can you look within your ranks? Constantly lying and laughing about who you are. Fuck you. So let's take it down a notch.
Take a pause. This is a beautiful thing. This will move a lot of our listeners to tears.
Gotta wipe my own out, actually, because they're coming out of caves, emerging from darkness. For years they've been missing. We'll see them soon.
Oh, good.
No matter how deformed, they're beautiful. They'll tell their tales, and it will shock us all. The guilty will see justice. This is like the justice porn bit. It'll be swift. The innocent will heal. We'll heal together.
Fucking hell. That is just pathetic. I mean, look, just ignoring the mole children QAnon sort of angle, it's just fucking terrible poetry. And whoever is responsible should fucking hang their heads and have their asses kicked from arsehole to breakfast time for trying to fob this fucking terrible shit upon us. The guilty will see justice. It will be swift. The innocent will heal. We'll heal together. Don't even fucking rhyme, you fucking cunt.
It's great. I mean, we've just spent about half an hour talking about sexual violent torture, and it's like, oh yeah, but mate, if you fuck with the cannon, that is high crime. You can run all the kids you want in tunnels. Look, I can relate, man. I need my adrenochrome just like anyone else.
Call that a stanza.
Literature. Yeah. You draw the line. Well, let's just say, speaking of tortured children, here is one that we prepared earlier. Have you ever wondered how Trump kept so youthful in comparison to sleepy Joe Biden, old Grandpa Joe? Come on, man. It's the adrenochrome.
You reckon he's on it?
And
the Trump star, he's on the adrenochrome?
Oh, absolutely. And while Barron has got to be feeling a little bit nervous considering his youthful, sort of composure there, Eric has been a great, reliable source of the chrome for some time. And that ain't going to end soon because he's a good-looking boy. But without that golden blood, he'll be no use to anyone. But between transfusion, he has no purpose at all. He's just simply
bastard on Father's
Day.
All right.
Cool. 30 minutes.
Beautiful.
Bang.
All right.